What is up, football fans? We're back with you. Nick Rice, Phil Nunziata, the goal line stand. The first week of games that matter. Let's get right into it. Peyton Manning shreds the steel curtain in his Broncos debut. Mark Sanchez goes off against the Bills. The Eagles win ugly against the Cleveland Browns. And we compare RG3 and Andrew Luck's debut. Let's get right into it. This is the goal line stand on Spreaker.
Welcome inside the NFL Goal Line Studios, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Nick Rice, and obviously you just heard Phil Nunziata. He is my co-host onto the set, and we are looking for a very interactive show, as always, on this edition of Football Analysis. NFL Goal Line is live, and we are also on any cell phone that can get into this number, 951-515-4552. I'll repeat, 951, the area code, then 515-4552. Text any questions you have. You can call into the show at any time. We are an hour-long broadcast bringing you everything there is to know about the NFL. We're done with preseason action, Phil, and now we go on to the regular season. And of all the Week 1 matchups, we don't have the Chargers and Raiders game kicking off yet, but so far the most intriguing matchup was over in the Mile High City as the Denver Broncos pulled it out against a tremendous Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Phil, right off the bat, what is your impressions of this Sunday nighter, a big matchup for Peyton Manning and his squad?
With a lot of questions on how Peyton Manning was going to perform in this game. It's been 610 days since Peyton Manning's last regular season game. You know, he looked pretty good in the preseason. You know, never did he play, more than 2 quarters. So it was interesting to see how he would stand up in a full game. You know, contact was imminent, and especially of all teams against the Steelers, who have a pretty good defense. And Peyton Manning definitely didn't disappoint. He was 19 of 26 for 253 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and ended up bringing the Broncos out to a win against a tough Steelers team. And it definitely poses the question, are we going to see the Peyton Manning of old this year?
Yeah, and for Peyton Manning going into the regular season, obviously all the questions were on that neck injury. And also, as we saw in that exhibition play, Peyton Manning, he took his first big hit in that preseason win against the Niners, and he came back firing on all cylinders. And in this game, the key turning point of the game was when Peyton Manning fired that strike to Demaryius Thomas to take the lead. And for a team like the Broncos, as long as they can work with that, Peyton Manning, they showed their no-huddle offense. I don't recall the Denver Broncos running much of a no-huddle last year. So they go back to that scheme, and it obviously worked against an aging defense. It'll be interesting when the Broncos have to play within the division. They have a couple tough defenses, including the Raiders and Chargers. Does this pose, Phil, I bring you this question now, was this win more a fact of the Steelers' defense getting very old and is just a step behind of the rest of the league, or were the Broncos just that good offensively?
Well, I honestly got to give this one to Peyton Manning. I think one of the questions that you put in there, along with his ability to make throws, is he mentally still in the game? And I remember a couple of plays there, Peyton Manning would call an audible, and Troy Polamalu would get into the box, as if we're to blitz. And there was a good 30 to 45 seconds where Troy Polamalu is changing his defense and Peyton Manning is changing an offense. You're seeing a chess match on a football field. You can see that Peyton Manning's mind is still perfectly in this game. And, that big play you're talking about to Demaryius Thomas was an audible to a screen pass because he saw the corner blitz coming, brought it right over his head, and Demaryius Thomas just had some blocks and got into the end zone. So, honestly, it's just Peyton Manning's ability to read defenses, and that's what makes him so valuable with his athletic ability combined. So honestly, I think he looks as good as at least for this game. You never know what's going to happen down the road, but for this game, you can say that he looks just as good as he ever has. And I got to give the credit to this one for Peyton Manning and not so much the Steelers not executing.
Well, it's obvious that the Steelers, we can just put this right out the window. The Steelers are not the number one defense that they were last year. They ranked tops in the NFL in total yards giving up. I feel like the Steelers defense has taken a step backward. They haven't really made that key rookie signing. But for the Broncos, you mentioned that Peyton Manning was just a surgeon out there firing to any it was a chess match against the Steelers' Dick LeBeau, and it really showed. Demaryius Thomas, 5 catches. catches. Eric Decker, 5 catches. Jacob Tamme, 5 catches. The Peyton Manning-led Broncos, they spread the ball around early and often to all these receivers. So for the Broncos, it's not a matter of if Peyton Manning can be the Manning of old. It seemed like he was a wide majority of that last year. Now it's about, can the Broncos run the football? Willis McGahee under 4 yards a carry. Not going to get it done with the greats of the Niners and the Ravens. They do play, obviously, the Raiders and Chargers twice, 2 above-average defenses. In the division, it'll be a test to see if the Broncos can run the football.
Well, it'll definitely be something to look for. They're obviously going to have to do better, Willis McGahee and the rest of those running backs. But when you go out and sign a guy like Peyton Manning, you're not looking to predominantly run the football. It's going to be a complement to a obviously pass-led offense. I mean, look at Peyton Manning with the Colts. They had Joseph Adai and they had Donald Brown. But overall, when you played the Colts, the running game was almost the last of your concern. This is definitely going to be a team that's pass first and maybe even pass second, and the run will just be to mix it up. It's definitely something they're going to need to improve on, and I think the reason they will is they won't have as much pressure to perform in the running game, considering Peyton Manning can bail him out. And as you called him, he's just a surgeon out there when he's lighting up defenses.
And yeah, for Peyton Manning, still getting it done in his 15th year, it's really just a marvel. He's really the only quarterback. He's running towards that record for set by Brett Favre as the most passing yards and passing touchdowns of all time. Manning's still firing strong in his 15th year, but obviously a guy that you can't really replace. But Andrew Luck over in Indianapolis is doing the best that he can. Obviously, with 3 interceptions, it's not going to get it done, but Peyton Manning, we do want on record, did struggle in his rookie year as well. And for Andrew Luck, in a big loss against Chicago, I did pick them as being one of those lock to lose the football game. How did you feel Andrew Luck played in his opening game of the regular season?
Well, as you said, if you look at Peyton Manning's rookie, his debut stats, I should say, in his first game, you look at Andrew Luck's, they're pretty close to identical. So that being said, Peyton Manning obviously didn't have a first game, but you can ask any Colt fan that obviously worked out pretty well for him. So it is one game, and it is against a very good Chicago Bears defense. So, he showed some promise. He made some throws. He also looked like a rookie at times, but he even said in his interview, it's a work in progress. I don't think anybody expected Andrew Luck to get in this system and just light it up like, say, Cam Newton did last year. This is a guy, he will be a working process. The reason they picked him over anyone else is he was the most pro-ready. The difference between the Redskins, as we'll get to in a minute, with RG3 and Andrew Luck is RG3 was given the keys to this offense, and they went out and they signed a bunch of guys, and they, not necessarily Super Bowl run, but they want to win now. Whereas Andrew Luck, when they got him, they're in for the long haul, and they're going to build around him slowly but surely, as they did with Peyton Manning. So I saw a lot of good things here. They did have him throw the ball 45 times, which I thought was kind of surprising that, a rookie quarterback would throw the ball that many times in his first game. But overall, to answer the question, I saw a lot of good and I saw a lot of bad, but he definitely has a lot to improve on.
Yeah, and for Donald Brown, he did have an above-average game against a good Chicago defense in that loss. But for Andrew Luck, it's eerily similar how close this game was to Peyton Manning in his opening debut, where Andrew Luck goes over 300 along with Peyton, and obviously Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne are 2 different receivers, but both with a similar skill set. It'll be interesting to see how Andrew Luck plays with not a lot of guys that you really have heard of in the receiving core. Donnie Avery and Kobe Fleener were the second and third biggest receiving threats for the Colts in this game. So for a team like the Colts moving forward, you just hope you can get a few good wins and Andrew Luck can progress as a quarterback. But Phil, as you mentioned, Andrew Luck, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a struggle all year long for this guy. And throwing the ball 45 times right off the bat, that's a tough way to go into Chicago and play in an opening season debut.
Yeah, as you said, the offensive weaponry isn't quite there yet. Of course, they have Reggie Wayne, and I think what will really help them, we'll see this as the season goes on, is Kobe Fleener from Stanford. They played together all through college. That has to help you when you have a tight end that you've known for 4 years, and you go through the experience of being drafted by the same team. You got to go through all of that together. That'll definitely help out. They have some young weapons that need to develop. A guy by the name of T.Y. Hilton at a Florida International, they drafted this year also. Had a great preseason. Look for him later in the year. He's got great speed and explosiveness. Here's a guy who might be the next big Indianapolis target, and that's the guy that they want Andrew Luck to gel with. He didn't play much in this game. I think the overwhelming, with the score being the way there is, and they're just trying to get back into the game, he didn't get a lot of playing time in this game. But that's a guy to look for, and they're, like I said, they're just going to slowly build around this offense, and they're not expecting to hit a home run on the first game.
Yeah, and for Andrew Luck, let's just, before a quick side note over to Chicago, it's hard to compete with a quarterback to receiver tandem that the Chicago Bears had. Andrew Luck had to watch Cutler complete to Brandon Marshall 9 times, including a touchdown, and really just the Chicago Bears were at a different level than the Indianapolis Colts. That was on tap all day long. And Alshon Jeffrey, the rookie, had a big touchdown, and he should be another guy that the Bears should be looking out for in the receiving game. So obviously for the Colts, it's a season that you just hope to get a few good wins and perhaps get a top 10 pick again, get some good guy and improve off of that. But for a struggling defense the Colts have, it's pretty tough to go into Chicago and win.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult, and as you're saying with Jay Cutler, Brandon Marshall, both these guys played together as Denver Broncos, and you can see they have not missed a beat. They looked great out there. Brandon Marshall looking like the Pro Bowl receiver that he is, something we didn't see a lot of in Miami. He had 6 touchdowns all of last year. So, he's 1/6 of the way there already, and it's only been the first game. So Brandon Marshall's definitely going to improve. I think he's almost a lock at this point, barring injury, of course, to be a Pro Bowl wide receiver this year. There's almost no way around it.
Yeah, and for just a quick note back to Andrew Luck, for this quarterback comparison, now all year long and perhaps all career long for Luck and Robert Griffin, these guys will be linked together seemingly with a bond who will be the better quarterback over time. It's obviously very interesting that they're two different skill sets. Andrew Luck, a big guy, stand in the pocket, fire it deep, but he does have that speed every now and then, but not the same speed that Griffin has. And in his win over the New Orleans Saints in the Super Bowl, I mention, they go into there, and for the first time in almost 2 years, the Saints lose at home. And for Robert Griffin, certainly an opening performance to remember. 19 of 26, 320 and 2 TDs, 0 interceptions, including a 88-yard to Pierre Garçon, who did have a good game as well, may I mention. Robert Griffin against Andrew Luck, who had the better game? Obviously, give that to Griffin, but what kind of keys did you see in this game that can perhaps show some sort of a season-long prediction for these two guys?
Well, you hit the nail right on the head. No matter what happens with these guys, their careers will always be linked for being, pick 1 and pick number 2. And you see the same thing with, Ryan Lee for Peyton Manning, or any two quarterbacks that are picked close to each other. And, you look at these stat lines here, it's obvious that Robert Griffin had the better day. But you could also argue that he played the worst defense of the two. Saints definitely had a lot of holes, even with their suspensions being lifted. Jonathan Millman did not play because of the bum knee. I don't care what quarterback you are. If you ask somebody right now, would you rather play the Saints defense with their missing personnel or the Chicago Bears defense? I don't know anyone who's going to want to play the Bears over the Saints when it comes to defenses. And, as you heard, one of his touchdowns, an 88-yard, quick strike, went in for a touchdown. About 60 yards of it was just him running. It was a blown coverage. He still was smart enough to get it there, but the numbers don't always tell the story on that one. Robert Griffin obviously outplayed Andrew Luck this time around, but it'll be interesting to see. I don't know that you can expect that from RG3 all the time. I'm sure he'll have his Chicago Bear type game where he throws 3 interceptions. I'm sure that'll happen to him at some point in his rookie year. But overall, he was very impressive in that game. If I can, compare him to any player, I know it's very hard to throw this out there right away, but he kind of reminds me of my favorite player of all time, and that's Randall Cunningham. With his lengthiness, his diversity, he can run around, make plays with his arms and his legs. It's a very long body in general. He's someone to definitely look for. And overall, I was impressed with his performance in New Orleans.
Yeah, and for Robert Griffin, obviously I would have to agree with that Randall Cunningham. Obviously, comparison is too early to tell for this guy. He had a tremendous Week 1 game, but also you may not mention, and New Orleans is a pretty bad defense compared to